At 9:45 p.m., over 4,000 people were eating dinner, laughing, and taking photos on a luxury cruise ship. Minutes later, the lights went out. A violent gap tore through the hull, flooding 6 compartments. But here's the part no one expects. How does a 114,000-ton ship not sink and instead roll and get stuck? This wasn't a storm or an engineering fault. This was the story of one man's ego and how it turned a calm night into the most humiliating maritime disaster of the modern era. Costa Concordia was a floating city, restaurants, theaters, swimming pools, luxury suites. For thousands of people, this ship meant one thing: safety and luxury. Built in 2004, owned by one of the largest cruise companies in the world, Carnival Corporation and PLC. Costa Concordia was designed to make people forget they were even on the ocean. Costa Concordia was absurdly big, nearly the length of 3 football fields, and taller than most buildings, carrying over 4,800 people at once. More than 1,500 cabins. Over more than 1,100 crew members ran this place like a small country, and all of it was moving at nearly 40 kilometers per hour on water. Costa Concordia was considered one of the safest cruise ships of its time. It carried more space and lifeboats than the number of people on board. Even if the ship tilted, those lifeboats could still be launched at a 20-degree angle. Everything about this ship was designed to survive the worst scenario. But every system has a weak point. On Costa Concordia, that weak point wasn't mechanical or structural. It was human. His name was Francesco Schettino. Francesco Schettino joined the company in his early 40s. Over time, he climbed the ranks, from working as a safety guard to staff captain and second-in-command, to finally, full captain. In 2006, he was given something big. A brand new luxury cruise ship, Costa Concordia. This was his moment. Years of experience with thousands of hours at sea and no major disasters. By 2012, he had nothing left to prove. Everything he had built over decades would be tested in a single night. January 13th, 2012. Early in the morning, crew members moved through the ship, cleaning cabins, preparing dining halls, checking systems, doing the same routines they had done hundreds of times before. By noon, passengers began arriving at the port of Civitavecchia, just outside Rome. Families rolled suitcases across the terminal. This was a planned 7-day Mediterranean cruise. A full week at sea, switching multiple ports. The ship was scheduled to leave Italy that evening, travel across the western and central Mediterranean, and return to the same port 1 week later. Passengers believed they had 7 full days ahead of them, but fate agreed on 3 hours. And somewhere between routine and confidence, a small deviation would soon turn a 7-day vacation into a disaster measured in minutes. For nearly 3 hours, the journey was calm and uneventful. Then the ship approached the waters off Isola del Giglio, a small island in the Tuscan archipelago, about 20 kilometers from the mainland. And this is where everything changed. That night, the captain decided to perform what's known as a sail-by salute. It's an unofficial tradition, a close pass near the shore, meant as a gesture of respect, sometimes done to impress passengers or locals. The safe route would have kept the ship 5 to 8 kilometers offshore. Instead, Costa Concordia was brought dangerously close, just 150 to 300 meters from the rocks. At approximately 9:45 p.m., the Costa Concordia struck the Loose Skull Rocks, a known and clearly charted reef. The ship was moving at around 15.5 knots. The impact tore a massive gash into the hull, stretching more than 50 meters. Water began flooding multiple compartments. Passengers heard something worse, a deep, violent scraping sound, like metal being dragged across stone. In dining rooms, glasses and plates smashed onto the floor. What happened next would decide everything. The captain attempted to maneuver the ship toward shallow water near Giglio's harbor, hoping to ground it safely. Captain gave commands to the helmsman, but he knew limited Italian, forming a language barrier. One misunderstood order caused a delay of about 13 seconds. 13 seconds doesn't sound like much, but at that speed, the ship traveled another 100 meters. Experts later testified that the crash was already inevitable. The ship was far too close to shore. Within minutes of the impact, announcements were made over the ship's intercom. Passengers were told there had been an electrical failure, that technicians were working on it, that everything was under control. Some crew members even asked people to return to their cabins. No evacuation instructions were given. No explanation of the real danger. Instead, evacuating the place and preparing the passengers for the worst, they denied it and said it was a normal blackout. As water continued flooding one side of the ship, the balance was gone. Slowly, the Costa Concordia began to tilt to the right. The water here was shallow, only about 20 to 30 meters deep. Instead of sinking, the ship rolled onto its starboard side and came to rest on a rocky underwater ledge near Giglio Island. By around 11 o'clock that night, the ship was leaning at nearly 60 degrees. At that angle, walking became climbing. Standing became sliding. Lifeboats on one side were now unusable. Others couldn't be launched properly. Precious time had already been lost. Some passengers, realizing help wasn't coming fast enough, made desperate choices, trying to save themselves in the dark, cold water. And in the middle of all this chaos, the unthinkable happened. The captain left the ship, while passengers and crew were still on board. Francesco Schettino boarded a smaller boat and moved away from the Concordia. The man responsible for over 4,000 lives was no longer on the bridge. By this point, outside help was already on the way. Italian Coast Guard patrol boats had arrived near Giglio. Local ferries and fishing boats, crewed by island residents, rushed out into the darkness to help. Rescue operations continued through the night, but the damage had already been done. 32 people lost their lives. Investigators would later agree on one painful truth. Every minute the ship stayed upright was a minute lives could be saved. Those minutes were spent denying reality. If evacuation orders had been given earlier, many of those lives could have been saved. What was done was done. The ship was destroyed. Lives were lost. But now came the most dangerous problem of all. Inside the wreck were more than 2,000 tons of heavy fuel oil. If that oil leaked into the surrounding waters, the damage wouldn't just be local, it would be catastrophic. It was an environmental emergency. The first priority was simple but terrifying: remove the fuel before it escaped. Between February and March of 2012, engineers carried out a delicate operation known as hot tapping. They drilled directly into the damaged hull, inserted pipes, and slowly pumped out the fuel, while the ship lay broken on its side. By March 24, 2012, more than 2,300 tons of heavy fuel oil had been removed. The immediate environmental threat was stopped, but the wreck was still there, and it couldn't stay. What came next had never been done on this scale before. The Costa Concordia had to be made upright again. Engineers called the operation parbuckling, a controlled rotation of a massive object back to vertical. To do this, they attached giant steel tanks called sponsons to the side of the ship. They anchored cables and hydraulic systems deep into the seabed, and they built enormous steel platforms beneath the wreck to support it. On the night of September 16, 2013, the operation began. Slowly, over nearly 19 hours, engineers applied controlled force. Inch by inch, the ship began to move. By early morning on September 17th, the impossible had happened. The Costa Concordia stood upright again. It was the largest parbuckling operation ever attempted on a ship of this size. And it worked. In 2014, the wreck was made buoyant once more. On July 23rd, the ship began its final voyage, not with passengers, but with tugboats. It moved slowly, barely faster than walking speed. Over 5 days, the Concordia was towed more than 300 kilometers to the port of Genoa. On July 27, 2014, it arrived at its final destination. In Genoa, the ship was taken apart piece by piece. Hazardous materials were carefully removed. Oils, batteries, and dangerous substances were safely handled. The massive steel body, more than 50,000 tons, was cut down and recycled. By July 2017, the dismantling was complete. The ship was gone. It drained money on a scale the cruise industry had never seen before. When everything was counted, insurance, salvage, legal battles, compensation, lost revenue, and environmental cleanup, the total economic damage crossed $2 billion. A ship that cost around $600 million to build was never repaired. It was written off completely. The Costa Concordia didn't sink because of a storm. It didn't fail because of bad engineering. And it didn't collapse because of fate. It failed because rules were treated like suggestions, because experience replaced discipline, and because ego was allowed to make decisions meant for systems, not people. The ship was built to survive flooding, power loss, and collision. That's why the Costa Concordia didn't just sink. It rolled, and it stayed there, not as a wreck, but as evidence.